All right, it's so live. How's everybody doing out there? Let's see. We've got 4 people in. Already have 4 likes. Thank you very much. This is Just One More Fish, and my name is Josh. And today we're going to talk about 3D backgrounds. I want to start out early with the question: have any of you tried to build your own 3D backgrounds? If you have, what have you been successful with? And then I've got a lot of stuff I've worked on that's worked out really well. So I want to kind of share some of that information with you. It seems like the deeper we dig into the hobby, the more we want to improve the look of our aquarium. And to get a really natural look, we have to put really fake stuff in there sometimes. Unfortunately, that's the way it goes. Unless you have a tank that's like 6 foot deep that you can just fill with rocks and driftwood, you have to have something to block the back out. So today we're going to talk about that. And I'm going to turn down my notifications. Cody is sharing something with the Fish Fam, and I'm thinking that's the link to the stream. Thank you, Cody. All right, Fish Room Fever is here. He's wanting to know if we've got beverages. I do. I don't know how I'm going to get it to you, though, buddy. That's kind of, it's here, and that's where it'll stay, I assume. So a quick check. Is the video looking good? Is the sound coming through okay? Am I loud enough? D. Sakura Jr. says he has not done 3D backgrounds, but he's seen it done. Yes, you have. You've been in my garage when I've done them. All righty. Up to 6 people. We'll give a few more minutes before we start talking and playing a little show and tell. I've only got one background with me that I've done. The rest of them are installed in tanks. All right. Thank you, Codyson. AV is good. Tamar is here. That's good. My wife. So I've done probably 15, 20 different backgrounds, and most of them have been moved on. And I'm going to try to do a little compilation video after this that's going to show some of the different ones I've done. And I'll try to have that up fairly quickly today in the next couple of hours. And it's just kind of shows some of the things you can do with the advice I'm going to give today. We've done things like sea turtles. We did a giveaway on Facebook, and whoever won the giveaway, they got to pick what they wanted their design to be. She wanted a sea turtle, so we did a sea turtle background, sent it to her. I've done waterfalls. Waterfalls are one of my favorite. I will say up front, if you have cichlids, I don't suggest waterfalls. It will be a constant nightmare for you to try to deal with. They like to empty them out. And then if you have smaller fish, they like to hide in there. Hey, Zen, good to see you. Thanks for coming. And I do want to thank the Zen Ginger for being a mod. Couldn't do this without mods. She's so fast at putting up links. And then Carrie was here. She was modding too, but she had to step away for some personal reasons. So I do appreciate the mods. Let's see. Have we all hit the like, says Codyson? Yeah, we're missing 2 people. Probably my wife. She's one of them. She hasn't decided if she likes me yet or not, but we'll get there. All right, so I did hear your car door. I will apologize. If it starts to get really annoying, there's someone here to clean our carpets today. And I'm in the garage, but they'll be parked right outside the garage with the machines running. And sounds like they may have just arrived. So if it gets really loud and really hard to hear, we'll shut this down and we'll just do this next week. But I want to make sure it doesn't get annoying for everybody. That would not be any good. Let's see. Oh, my wife liked it before I started. Look at that. She is all over it. Thank you, dear. All right. So we'll go ahead and get started with a couple of different ways you can do tank backgrounds. Again, if any of you have done them, please let me know. And I would actually like to do... Oh, he's not here yet. I could have swore I just heard a car door, so maybe he's not here yet. Maybe we can get through some of this first. I would like to do a showcase video where at the beginning of some of my videos, I show off somebody's tank that they've done a 3D background in. In fact, my channel started with 3D backgrounds. If you go back, I decided I didn't like the way my videos looked. I thought I was able to help and provide some education on 3D backgrounds, but I don't think I did a very good job of it. So I took like a year off of making videos just so that I could learn. I spent a lot of time watching YouTube videos, creators on how to make videos. I'm still not real good at this, but I feel like at least now maybe I can impart some of the knowledge from the backgrounds and how they were made, and hopefully help some of you out. So first of all, I love using foam, and you can use several different types of foam. People say that you can't use the pink foam, you can't use the white foam, you can't use the open cellulose foam, you have to use the closed. It all works. Foam is foam. A lot of people worry about if you heat the foam, it's going to release. Well, that release ends as soon as it is hardened. So you don't have to worry about that later on. So what we do is we take the foam, we'll carve out whatever our design is, and then we can silicone it straight to the back of the tank. So to make a rock is real simple. You're just going to take a piece of the pink insulating foam, and I suggest using a knife with a lot of teeth, very serrated knife, because you have to remember nothing in nature is straight lines, right? So you want everything to be broken up and kind of unordinary looking. But I just use a serrated knife, cut around the edges, and then I heat it up with either a torch or a heat gun, and that's a rock that sticks right to the back wall. Usually what I'll do is I'll measure out the tank and then cut the piece of foam big enough to fit the back of the tank, draw in some rough areas to make rocks, and that's how that's done. Whenever you're going to coat that, there's several ways to do it. So the one that was in my thumbnail, that was actually just acrylic paint. You can buy acrylic paint anywhere, like Walmart, Michael's, any hobby store. They all have acrylic paint. You want 100% acrylic. That's the easiest way to go with that. Let's see, YouTube just told me I'm live. Awesome. Thank you, YouTube. 6.5 minutes in, YouTube has now told me I'm live. So yeah, acrylic paint is the way to go with that. And you can use acrylic paint for a lot of things. I've had decorations that, you know how someone gives you a tank, right? And they always comes with a box bigger than the tank full of things that they wanted to put in the tank. And the decorations are always bleached out. It's just the way it is. You can actually take those and repaint those with the acrylic paint and then just seal over them. Now for seal, there's a lot of controversy over what you can use. I have found that Minwax, polyurethane, the satin, the non-high gloss or semi-gloss, just satin, that does a great job. And I use the spray can. I do that. A lot of people complain that the propellants could cause issues with the fish. If you let the thing cure properly, you won't have an issue. So the tank that was in the thumbnail, that one was built over a year ago, and it still has some of the original fish in it. There's the blue angel fish that's in there, still one of the originals. Not having any issues with that. I'm having more issues with the way I put the planters in that tank and having a hard time getting enough light to all the plants. That would be the issue I'm having. I didn't think that went through all the way. But the fish are doing fine in there, not having any issues at all. So you're going to want to look for the spray Minwax polyurethane. And I always suggest letting it sit at least 72 hours before you even try to put it in water. Then you put it in water for, I usually would soak it a couple of times before I put fish in it. So obviously with these backgrounds being made out of foam, the big issue is foam floats, right? So you're going to have to silicone these to the back of the tank. There's no way around it. They don't clip in. They don't just slide in and sit there. You fill it with water, it's going to float. So usually if I've gone ahead and done the polyurethane over the top, and I do 3 or 4 coats of it, you want to make sure to cover it really good. You don't want the paint to come loose later on. 3 or 4 coats of polyurethane, let it dry overnight, go ahead and mount it into the back of the tank. And then by the time the silicone is set, you're usually good. Silicone takes, they say 24 to 48 hours, but if you're going to use that much to do an entire back of a tank, say at 55 gallon, you're going to want to give that about 7 days to sit and cure. The edges are going to dry within an hour, and then you're going to think it's okay. But as soon as you put water in there, it's going to pull away. What's nice is you can get a lot of suction if you go around the edge of the background and then fill the inside in. When you push it, it's like a suction cup. It holds itself there pretty nicely. You don't really have to worry about it sliding loose or coming loose while it's drying. So that's some tips for that. The one that I did in the thumbnail, I actually used 1/2-inch styrofoam that you can buy. I believe I got it at Home Depot. and it's real simple. I just took the sheets and I made irregular cuts along the sheet, and then I flipped them and stacked them in different levels. Doing that gave me that nice rock layer look. And then as for the planters, literally they're styrofoam balls. You can buy the half ball at a hobby store, and you hollow out the middle, stick it in place, add a couple of cracks, and you're good to go. The trees are a little more difficult. So when you do the trees, you got to, you're trying to mimic nature. So you don't want to try too hard to make the perfect lines or the perfect knots or any of that stuff. You just kind of look at it. And honestly, when I do a tree, I do them so fast because if I think about it, I'll mess it up. It's literally using a Dremel tool with the sandpaper bit, the little round sandpaper bit, and you just take off a little bit at a time. I did that with a piece of foam. I have some big rectangle pieces that are like 18 inch by 12 inch by 20 inch, something like that. And that's what I carve all the larger items out of. But yeah, that you just don't want to get too technical with. Make your basic design and then just quickly work your way down the side of it, and it comes out pretty nice. Once you add paint, a lot of people think it's the real thing. In fact, one of the tanks behind me, which you won't be able to see from here, definitely can't see it from here. It actually has a tree in it that I made with a piece of actual real driftwood coming out the side of it. Just something I tried. It worked out. I liked it, but now it's in a wall and I can't hardly see it because of how it's sitting in the rack. See, Zen Ginger shared us on Facebook to the fish tubers. Fantastic. Thank you. I appreciate that. Carrie's here. Hi, Carrie. I don't trust my sculpting abilities. I'm afraid trees would look terrible. Zen, that's the thing about trees. Like, you really can't mess it up. When I was making the one in the video, there's a spot in there where it's kind of hollowed out a little too far, and that was a mistake. But it ended up looking like a knot. You just shadow it in darker, and you don't really have too much trouble with that. It's kind of nice how forgiving trying to match natural landscape is. It's pretty easy. If you mess up, it's probably going to make it look better, right? What's nice about the trees and the rock backgrounds is you can hide things. That is the most amazing thing about that. You can hide anything. So the tree in the thumbnail, that one is actually hiding the heater intake, the outflow, and the filter intake, outflow, and the heater. All three of those are in there. So it takes the water from underneath the tree, shoots it back out over the top of the tree, and it's warming it in between there. So it's nice little thing to set up. I just built another one that has a large rock in the corner that sticks out. It's for a 75 gallon. In fact, it's up above me. I completely forgot that one was up there. I might grab that in a minute. But it has a spot to hide your heater intake, your heater and intake. Let's see. D. Sakura says, Josh used to think he wasn't any good too. He made his first little tree. Turned out incredible. One thing. Yeah. The Dremel tool is a must. So the first background I did, so I was really bored. Okay. Like I just had surgery and was told I couldn't really do a whole lot for several weeks. I was told to kind of stay in. And so I bought some foam and started playing around with this idea of building a waterfall in a 90 gallon that I had. And I'll make sure I put that in the video that I'm going to put up later on. The cutting it with the knife it wasn't that bad. I mean, if you use a serrated knife, it cuts through pretty quick. If you use a razor blade knife, it tends to get stuck and you end up tearing it all up. The foam doesn't come apart nicely at all. And it worked out. It went well, but I didn't put a tree in that one. If I was going to make a tree, I would only use a Dremel tool. It makes life so much easier. To put bark on the tree, you literally just tap the Dremel tool against the tree and it grooves out perfect size sections. And yes, Donnie, I did not think I was very good. I still don't think I'm very good compared to some of the ones that you see out there. Definitely don't compare with some of the big 3D molded companies that do their own thing. But if you're looking to do it on your own, they turn out pretty decent. All right. Zen Ginger, I have a Dremel. Well, you're halfway there, right? All you need now is a heat gun. Go grab you a heat gun, and we're going to make some backgrounds. It's going to be so much fun. Let's see. I have use of a Dremel, says Carrie. I don't know if that's the same, Carrie. You either have a Dremel or you don't. If you have use of one, I don't know if they're going to want it returned full of foam. Let's see. It's an art, right? So practice is probably key. I would say practice is key, but it's honestly, it's so much easier than it looks. Foam, you're not making faces here. You don't need the eyeballs to be symmetrical. You're not looking to like have perfect ears on the sides or the nose. You're just making something to put into a fish tank. I made a little 3D background for the neighbor kids, and it has an arch in it, and then another larger rock, and then the whole back wall is a rock wall. And then I hit that thing with glow in the dark paint. I made it all like gray black, but then I hit it with some splatter paint from some neon glow in the dark colors, and they put glowfish in it. Turned out really cool. And that was like, I think maybe my third tank I did. And it was really just, I want to see what this turns out like. I probably couldn't sell it if I were to try to sell it online, but the neighbor kids really liked it. So that worked out. Okay. Carrie lives in a house with a Dremel. This is getting odd, Carrie. It's getting real odd. All right. Alice is here. Hi, Alice. Good to see you here. All right. I'm going to commit the YouTube crime. I'm going to stand up for a second and grab something off this shelf. All right. This one is for the 75 gallon. And actually, this one was up for auction and nobody bid on it. So it's still mine. But it actually has another piece here. And then right here, there's a piece of driftwood that I custom built this around that kind of crawls out into the fish tank. This is what I was talking about, the rock that sticks out quite a bit. And underneath that, there's a place to hide your filter. So this was literally just done. You can see the way it's carved out. I just used the Dremel. Run the Dremel straight down it to make the design, then run over it with a heat gun a little bit, and that hardens it and gives it that nice structure. Here's another piece that goes somewhere on here, maybe there. So, that a lot of things you can do with that. And that's if you're trying to make a natural design. Now I got to figure out where to put this thing so it's not in my way. All right. So one of the other types of designs that I've done is, when people do want something sculpted, and we've done, like I said, we did the sea turtle. I also have done a few other ones, and I have one here that I started. The fish room took over. I was unable to finish it, but this one's for my nephew. And this one is all dinosaur based. I'm not sure how well that's going to show up on camera. Still needs to have all the painting finished, but it's all darkened out on the inside. Then I'll add color. It's supposed to look like a fossil wall when it's finished. So the easiest way to do this, and I mean really easy to do. In school, you had trace paper, right? Everybody had those books where they'd send you a fairly simple picture and you would trace over it. Hey, look what I did. I've got my own picture. I drew this. I traced this. That's all I did with this. You take a piece of paper that you've run through the printer with whatever design you want and just tape it out on the board and then start from the inside and work your way out. If you do the outside first, then it's useless because you've already carved the whole thing out. The paper won't stay put. Start on the inside with the smaller details, work your way to the outside. And when you take the paper off, that's what it looks like. It ends up being pretty much exactly what you laid out. Again, use acrylic paints. I did hit that with a light heat coating. I always heat every one of these. It melts those little foam balls together so that they're not floating in your tank. So I do that on all the sides and the front, not so much the back. But when you use any kind of a knife or, a hot knife is nice. Hot knife won't do that, but hot knife is really hard to carve with, so you have to use the Dremel for that. But when you don't heat it, then you always end up with debris that floats away. You really want to bond that together with the heat. Let's see. Carrie says, I don't think I'd like the cleanup. I hate the cleanup. I am going to admit that. If you do this, do not do it in your house. I did it in the garage, and it was funny because one day I'm sitting out here and I'm just using the Dremel like a madman, carving out this big log, right? I turn around and my daughter standing there laughing. She said it looks like a snow globe. And then she bends down and she picks up handfuls of the little styrofoam balls that come flying off, put them in a bag. She went in and put it in slime and was playing with it for like a week. It cracked me up. But yeah, whenever I did a lot of the carving, it was a mess. And I'm going to be out of the carving till this summer, just because this fish room is where I used to do it. Right here to the left of me, where this fish tank is, was my carve station. I did all my carving, my painting, everything here. When I had to put this room in, it took all that away. So I do have a desk set up outside, but right now there's 15 fish tanks sitting on and around it that I need to get sold or get installed, or I need to do something with. The wife is not happy with them being out in front of the garage, so now they're on my workbench. All right. Clarification. It's Carrie says that it's her father's Dremel, and he's old and foolish enough to let me use it. I would never, ever, ever call your father foolish. Mostly I don't know him. But maybe he's foolish enough to let you use it. We'll have to see. So if anybody is interested in how to do some of this, a lot of my older videos show the work, but I didn't do a real good job of explaining how it was done. But I think like just from watching those videos, you can see quite a bit how that went, what goes into it. Let's see, let's catch up on a few here. Zen Ginger says, OMG, foam slime, that is great. Yeah, my daughter, she scares me a little bit sometimes. So she's actually got permission from the principal to make slime and take it to school and sell it. And she's sold a decent amount of it, it seems. She's always asking for more glue. So I keep telling her, if you're going to sell something, you have to at least make enough to buy the ingredients to make the product. But she's the ultimate entrepreneur, right? She sells it and then gets me to buy the ingredients to make the product. Yes, Donnie, I had a good drawing person to D. Sakura here. He lives pretty close to me. He did some of the dinosaurs. Let's see. I think you got me the skull, the shoehorn crab or the horseshoe crab, the raptor claw, stuff like that. So yeah, it helps if you have someone who can draw that's nearby, and if not, go online and print something up. Let's see. He's got a sense of humor. I'm assuming we're still talking about your dad, Carrie. All right. So if anybody has any questions on those types of backgrounds, please feel free to shoot them out. I'm happy to answer them or talk to you about them. I'm going to go ahead and switch over to another type of background that I've seen a few times that people have tried to do, and it seems to be a source of frustration. I did it, and it was okay. I'm going to say it's really easy, but it's really easy to get frustrated with. And some people have tried it, and it doesn't seem to hold up well for them, or they just don't get the effect they desire from it. And that is using expanding foam. So you get the great stuff, expanding foam, that you can get in a spray can. You can get it at any hardware store. It's made for filling cracks and windows and things like that. I've seen a lot of people lately. Sounds like the carpet cleaner just started. I can hear it, but I don't know if you guys can. So if there's a really annoying hum, please let me know, and we'll shut down fairly soon. Zen Ginger says, great stuff is tricky for sure. It is. So here's the trick to it. What you need to do is build yourself a frame, okay? You know how big your tank is. Build a frame that's about an inch short on all sides so that you're not over expanding. And you can use 1x1s or 1x4s, something cheap from the store, 1x3, something to contain and hold that together. Then you're going to take some of this, it's up there, this stuff here, it's the foam they use for siding. They put it behind the siding of a house. You put some of that down. That's your back for your foam, right? This is where it gets fun. Take elbows from PVC pipe and stick them in different areas with the ends exposed. Put a rag in there or something, some paper towels. When you pull those out, the foam will enclose all of that and leave you caves. The fish love the caves. The one I did, I couldn't hardly get the fish out of that cave, and they went nuts over it. It was pretty interesting. So you're going to fill that area in with foam. Realize the foam is going to expand. So use, about, if you're thinking I'm going to make this and fill it all in, it's not really necessary to fill the whole thing in. It will expand out quite a bit. I do suggest you go a little bit overboard because you don't want any gaps in it. And then the next trick is pour sand over it. Not a little bit of sand, a ton of sand. So I'm talking like, go get a bag of playground sand. I think it comes in a 50-pound bag. Empty the entire bag on top of this structure you just made. What it does is as it tries to expand, and it will not stop expanding, it's going to fight to get through that sand. If you don't use the whole bag, you'll come out the next day and there's going to be cracks and all kinds of stuff where it's coming apart. And that just leads to more frustrations. Pour the whole bag on it, try to get it fairly even, mound it up, keep it on there pretty heavy. As it tries to expand, certain areas that it finds weaknesses in the sand, it expands more. And that leads to sand falling off and creating other areas that are depressed even more and pushed in. It comes back looking a lot like live rock, like from the ocean. It's really, really cool looking. The only problem I have with it is then you have just a sand colored background, right? I mean, live rock's more gray with some purple, some greens. You've just got sand. Cool design, but it's brown. So what you do is you get yourself an airbrush. If you don't have an airbrush, there's other ways to do it using straws. I know it sounds really weird, but you can pinch a straw and kind of blow into it, and it's a pain to do it that way. Or you can just use a real light paintbrush and just barely coat. And what I found works best is I use green on top and purple on bottom. So anywhere something sticks out, a ledge sticks out, I use just a light coated green, and it kind of mimics the algae growth that you would get from light that would end up on top of a rock. And then underneath, I try to use a little bit of a light purple. And I know there's not a lot of purple algae in freshwater, but it really makes a background pop. Anytime you can use a little bit of purple in it, and it sounds strange, try it. Let me know what you think. It always seems like it comes out better with a little bit of purple in it. Let's see. Zen Ginger says they make lots of colors of silica sand. Wonder if that would work. That probably would work. The only issue is you have no control over that. So, anywhere you put the sand, and the sand doesn't really want to stick to the foam when it's finished. So there's going to be areas where you can see the foam through the sand, which is unfortunate. I didn't like that about it, but the paint really fixes that issue because you can blend and make it look like it's all one piece of rock. It really turns out nice. And I found that when I switched over to an airbrush, it just made life way easier. I had a lot less trouble getting the results I wanted. Again, when you're finished with that, go ahead, give that thing 4 or 5 days. It expands even when you think it's done. If you think, okay, it's done, you sweep everything off, you come back the next day, it's expanded another inch. And then it's cracked and it's a mess. Set that somewhere where you don't need the space. Let it sit for 4 or 5 days. Seriously, it'll turn out much better if you do. When you're finished with that and it's cured and it's hardened, sweep off the sand lightly, stand it up, shake it. A lot of sand's going to fall off that you wish would stick. Hit that thing with a ton of that Minwax polyurethane. The last one I did was a 40-gallon tall, and I think I went through a can and a half. But I was done, it stayed together pretty well. I didn't have any more falling off. I put it in a tank that had convict cichlids in it, and they couldn't do any damage to it at all. So I know a lot of people worry about the damage that fish can cause to them. They're really sturdy if done properly. So if anybody has questions on that one, we're at about 30 minutes, and I'm ready to answer any questions about 3D backgrounds. I feel like I've been rambling for a long time. We got 10 people here, 10 likes. That's a good number to have. Aquatic Nest, how are you doing? Good to have you here. All righty, so I'll give it a few minutes, see if anyone has questions. As for fish safety, I've been doing this way for, the first one I did was probably 7 years ago, 8 years ago. And that was the waterfall concrete tank. And that's another thing I didn't go over, concrete. We can talk about that one in a second too. That tank is literally in my neighbor's house right here and still looks really good. He actually tried to get the waterfall going again, but he has massive African cichlids in it, and they're just not having it. He told me last week he's kind of upset because he went and bought the sand and he got it running and it looked pretty and it was gorgeous. And he sat back for 10 minutes like, oh, I love this. He said he went to do something, came back, and it wasn't working. And it's all because the fish, they decide that they're not having it. They take it all out of there. Carrie says, do you think a 5 gallon is too small for such a background? Absolutely not. You can do these on just about any size. Hey, F&S, good to have you here. You're never late because there's always a replay if you want to watch. I will not argue with you, but I'm glad to see you in here. But back to Carrie's question about a 5 gallon, less is more on a 5 gallon. I don't know if that makes any sense. You don't want to have a lot of things sticking out too far, right? Because it's a 5 gallon. The one that I made for the neighbor kid, that was a 5 gallon. And literally all I did was take a piece of the pink foam and I heated it with a heat gun and held it in some areas longer. So it looked like the erosion had taken the rock away. And it looked like one solid piece of rock with, some cracks and stuff in it. And then I made a couple small decoration pieces to silicone to the bottom. They've had that tank for over a year. And the neighbor just told me yesterday that the kids are tired of feeding the fish. So the fish are fine. They're not dying. They're doing great in there. But the kids are tired of feeding them. So I may end up getting those fish back in the room here. And that tank may become available again if they decide they don't want it anymore. But I've done this on 5s and 10s. I've done lots of 5s and 10s. In fact, the sea turtle one was a tank for someone in Pennsylvania who won that. These tanks behind me are 10s. I have a rock wall in one of those with a piece of driftwood that comes out of it. And really, that's the most simple way to do it. If you just want cheap and fast, go get a piece of the 1/2 inch. You can get a 4x4 sheet. I think it's like $7 or $8 at Home Depot of that pink insulating foam. And then just run a heat gun over it, make a few indentions where you want them. You can paint that thing completely one color. You can paint it all gray and then come back over it with a little bit of green, a little bit of purple. You're done. Silicone it to the back of the tank, let it sit for a week, and you're golden. With those, you can't really hide much because there's no depth to it. It's just that, 1/2 inch, and you've actually shrunk it when you melt it. But it looks great in a little 10 gallon. You can always use plant cover to hide a filter if you have a sponge filter or a hang on the back filter. And that's another thing you need to account for. If you have a filter, measure your filter before you build your background, please. There's nothing worse than putting a spot for your filter to go in, and then you put the background on and you realize, I needed that to be 3 inches over farther this way, and now I can't filter my tank. And chances are you're not going to buy a filter that fits that profile unless you get a canister filter. Those you can pretty much do whatever you want with. But just take a little time up front, think about it. Where do I want my filter? Hang the filter on the tank, measure it out. And if you have a 1/2 inch tube or, whatever size the actual intake and outflow tube are, go ahead and measure that out and then allow yourself 3 times that space. So if you're off by a little bit, it can adjust. what's nice is if you're doing multiple pieces, you can actually build the rock wall around the filter and then overlap with other pieces to make it stick out farther, which is kind of a interesting thing to work with. That's like the one I showed up here. That's what I did with this one. Let's see. This is the technique I was talking about. I'm just using this pink foam. That's all it is. You know, a few quick swipes with the Dremel, or you can just use a heat gun and heat it up. But then I added a piece up here, and that's what's going to hide my filtration on this tank. I don't know if it'll show up with the lighting, but this one does have, I don't think it's going to. It's got the greens and the purples, very light. You don't want to overdo it because, you know, if you want it to look natural, you just need small amounts of those colors added in. Put that back up there. All right, let's see if anyone else has questions here. See, Zen Ginger, I use the pond grade black great stuff to help build my rock wall and a mud skipper tank. Well, I'm jealous you have mud skippers. I'm going to go ahead and say that right now. It's great for filling the beach area. I love the stuff. Yeah, it's so if you use the great stuff, and that's actually what it's called, great stuff, and it's the expanding foam. If you use that, wear gloves, and it gives you a lot more leeway as to what you can do. Don't touch that stuff with your bare hands. It doesn't come off easy. It's a total pain to get off. But yeah, there's a lot of options for what you can do with it, and really, you know, your imagination is the limit on that one. It's hard to imagine something you couldn't do with that kind of foam or this kind that I'm using here. You can just create whatever you want with it, honestly. Let's see. Carrie says, I imagine less is more. Yeah, in a 5-gallon especially, just doing a real thin back wall is the best option. When I did that giveaway and somebody requested a sea turtle tank, I had great ideas. Like I wanted to build a sea turtle out of clay that was coming out of this side of the tank, right? So like you've got your glass and a turtle sticking out the side of the tank like it's coming in, and then have the background. And then she said it was a 10-gallon. That kind of limited the options. So I just cut it down to doing a little 3/4 of an inch backdrop. And it ended up being less than a 1/2 inch by the time I carved away everything I needed for the turtle to show up. Carrie says that she will pay Zen Ginger to make one because she has a Dremel. Now, remember, Carrie, that Zen earlier said she doesn't trust her artistic skills at all. So you may want to negotiate low for that one, right? Probably costs more to ship than you could buy one for. They actually are really not that bad. So I sent the 10-gallon one. I think it was... I'm thinking it was like $14 to ship. It really wasn't bad at all. I couldn't imagine what it would cost to ship one for a 75-gallon because it's bulky, but weight's not an issue. I mean, they're made out of foam, right? They're super light. So that's not an issue. The shipping isn't too bad. I don't mind seeing a bit of the filter. Yeah, I mean, in a 10-gallon, you're going to see some filter, but that's all right. There's nothing wrong with that. And actually, the 10-gallon I have over here, I did put a corner log in that to hide my filter behind, but then it just didn't work out very well. So it ended up being where the heater went and the filter stood on the outside. But that didn't work very well either because I didn't have enough water flow, right? So you've got the log and the heater behind it and the filters on the other side of the tank with no way to push water through that log. Ended up being a problem for me. So it ended up being just a decoration. No purpose to it whatsoever. So I did something about a concrete coating. That's something I didn't talk about. I'm going to take a drink real quick. I would have thought it'd been more humid in here, but it's not too bad. And I dry out quick. Okay, so I've also seen online where people have done videos and they've done the rock wall out of foam, and then they cover it with concrete. Within a couple of weeks, the concrete starts to chip and fall off, and it becomes a huge problem. And at this point, you've already got it silicone to the back of the tank. you're kind of stuck with it and it's falling apart. There's already fish in the tank. Not real pleasant. So I've tried a few different ways of doing this to see what would work. And I'll admit, the last one I did, I rushed through it. I made one for my wife, went in her office, had a little corner waterfall, had a castle on one side and a waterfall on the other side. It's supposed to have a lot of big plants in it. She had a little mini parrot cichlid that we'd picked up that liked to hide in the castle until he was full grown. Then he was going to go in the big tank. It lasted 6-7 months. I had nothing but trouble with the waterfall because the mollies kept swimming into it. Like, I don't know how many dead mollies I found in that thing. And they were completely healthy like 10 minutes before. And then I walk into her office. I'm like, the waterfall's not working. So I go in there and start messing around with it and blow out a molly. And the thing, is pretty much toast. I don't suggest them with small fish like mollies and stuff. It's tough to find the right fish for a waterfall. It really is. But then when I rushed through, I really did. I built the waterfall and coated it, had it painted and clear coated the next day. And within a few more days, it was in the tank and full of water. My mistake with that is I'd used 2 coats of concrete and they were both thick coats and neither one of them stuck to the foam very well. So what I suggest and what's worked for me in the past, take your time with it, obviously, but use really thin coats of concrete. Water it down a little bit too much for the first several coats, first 2 coats at least. Really water it down. That gives you a base to stick to. It gets into all the pores and cracks and all the different areas that you can't get a chunk of concrete into. After you've gotten a few of those coats on, then go up to a little bit thicker, still not crazy thick. And I would say do 4 or 5 coats on there of the concrete. And if you just don't like the color of concrete, I don't like the color of concrete, you can use the concrete dye. It's a powder that comes, it's in the concrete section. The one I did, I used terracotta. It came out a nice, brick red color, and it worked pretty well. Didn't have any issues with the fish. The big issue with concrete is pH. It's going to shoot through the roof. Concrete is naturally going to just cause huge pH issues. So with a concrete finished background, you will have to change the water every 24 hours for a week or 2 until you get your pH in control. When I did mine, it literally sat out here in the garage. No, not here. I live somewhere else. Sat on the back deck. I would fill it up in the morning. The next day I would come back, completely empty it out, fill it back up. I did that for 7 days before I even tested it. On the 7th day, I was still having some pH issues. But after, I think it was 9 or 10 days, it really dropped off, and those pH issues weren't a problem anymore. You don't want to try to kill those with chemicals, because then you're just going to have pH swings all over the place. It's a mess. Nobody wants to deal with that. So make sure you take the time to rinse that concrete off really well. Let's see. D. Secora Jr., what silicone is safe? I know not all. There is a lot of debate about that, and I'm probably going to get criticized for it, but I use GE. It's 100% silicone. You can get it in clear or black. It's got the black silicone that I used to redo that one, and it turns out really nice. If you're going to do a complete reseal on a tank, I love black silicone. It's got better lines to it. But anything that says 100% silicone and doesn't have mold resistant additives to it, and you can look at the back, almost all of them are going to say not for aquarium use. And that's only because they don't want to end up with a lawsuit over it being used for aquarium use. That's not what they intended it for, obviously. But if you look at the actual makeup of it, it's the same stuff as they sell. A small tube that's about half the quantity is $2 more than a full tube of silicone. It's really just the same thing. And some people agree with that, some don't. That's just my opinion. And everyone's allowed to have one, right? That's what I use. Again, I've been using it for years. I've never had a problem with it. I've tried a few other types. There's one out there called Red Devil that's 100% silicone. I had no issues with the fish, but the smell was atrocious. Like I I went through one tube, and I think I had a tube or two laying around. I refused to use it because it was awful. It was so much stronger than the usual. Let's see here. Where are we at? FNS Fish Room says, I do that, but coat with epoxy. My cichlids push out the sand for my waterfall. Yeah. I think you were just after I said that, but I built mine for cichlids and they emptied the waterfall out repeatedly. I went through bags and bags and bags of sand. Finally, I gave up and I was like, it looks good without a waterfall. But I am going to do a video with that tank in it, and I'll try to get that posted up this afternoon if at all possible. I'll have to see what the schedule looks like. Zin says that's how they make water features for DIY home projects. Super watery concrete gives you a smooth finish and doesn't fall apart with water. That is true. That is how they do it. The thing with the aquarium background is you may not necessarily want a totally smooth finish. Rocks in nature aren't typically real smooth. So if you're looking for that little bit of grit to it, then there's nothing wrong with doing a heavier coat after you do the first few light coats. Zen Ginger says she uses Aquarium silicone because it's the only one that specifically says aquarium safe on Amazon. Yeah, and a lot of people will do that. I'm not going to knock anyone who says that or does that. For me, I personally have never had a problem with GE. And the day I do, I will get on here and I will tell everyone don't use it because it killed fish. And the tank that's in my thumbnail, that one was actually a tank that we found in a yard. D. Sakura found it. We were on our way to buy something up north and he saw it. We went and picked it up. The thing was literally falling apart. There was no trim left on it. By the time I carried it into my garage, it was in 5 separate pieces, flat glass, filthy. And I was able to clean that tank up, completely rebuild it, and then put the background in it. It's been running. It's probably pushing almost 2 years now, and I haven't had any issues at all. So I have no complaints with it. FNS Fish Room. Here we have a home hardware that sells their brand. That says aquarium safe. Well, that's interesting. They sell their own brand that says aquarium safe. I'm interested. I have not seen one that's not made for marine use that says it's safe. That's interesting for me. Quick check. I got a message that the video isn't looking real good right now. Is it all pixelated? Does it look bad? Do I need to shut this down quickly? I don't want to have a video that's impossible to see or audio that sounds bad. And we'll just let that go for a second, see if anyone answers. I know that the delay on this is it's a bit pixely. All righty. So I'm having some issues with I'm trying to get my camera settings right. I haven't quite learned how to use the OBS Studio yet. I really need to because it will fix a lot of my issues. The camera itself, I think, is okay. Yeah, I just got another message that it's getting blurry. So if anybody has any questions, now's a good time. Otherwise, we're going to shut this down in about 2 minutes. We'll be right at 50 minutes. It'll be our longest stream yet. Eventually, I'd like to get up to an hour and a half, but I don't want to bore people. So I know I've been jabbering on about backgrounds for almost an hour, but I want to make sure if anyone has questions about it that I get a chance to answer those for you. It buffered for a few seconds and it got fuzzy, but it's okay. Oh no, I don't like the buffer thing. I've seen Dan fight with that. I don't want that. And for those who don't know, if there's anyone here who doesn't know who Dan is, I'm talking about Dan's Fish Room. He does a show on Wednesday evenings. It's at 8 o'clock my time, which is Central. I guess it's 7 o'clock his time, but 8 o'clock Central. We'll go with that. 9 o'clock Eastern. And now it's getting a bit worse. All right. Well, I don't see any questions coming through. So I think we're going to go ahead and call it and see where we get from, or see what we get from that. I appreciate everyone coming out. We have 9 people here and 11 likes. That's always good, even though I know people are in and out. I always appreciate the likes. If you're new, please consider subscribing. I have videos that I try to get out every week. And hopefully this stream will get better every week. It's something we're working on. Zen Ginger just posted up a link to Dance Fish. Zen, if you don't mind, can you throw up a link to Get Gills as well? If you don't know, Get Gills is a great place to buy fish. I don't have any on there yet, but I will soon. Right now, I am selling CO2 caps. And that's going to sound awful trying to open that. This one will sound better. It's not the same kind of bag. Yeah, if you look up my store there, you'll find CO2 caps. This one I had to steal the little grommet from. But these, they'll tighten down, and a lot of people use them for CO2 projects for your planet tanks. I use them up here for brine shrimp hatchery. So there's a lot of great products there, a lot of plants. I saw Father Fish opened up a store there. So check it out. And I like it better than Aquabid. You know, it's easier to scroll through. It's easier to find what you're looking for. If you're selling, join sell there. That would be fantastic. All right, everybody, there's your link. With that said, I hope everybody has a great week, and we will catch you next week at the same time. See you later.